Hello, everyone. We're here again for the Next Health Forefront podcast, and I am here with my amazing buddy, Peter Diamandis, who I've known now for a very long time, but we've been connecting a lot over the last few months. It's fantastic.
It has been fantastic.
It has been. Peter, you have a million titles, but you are, I know you because you are the founder of Singularity, X Prize, Abundance 360, three things that have changed my life. I mean, literally, I'm not just saying that to compliment you, but they really have changed my life. And I'm also here with Kevin Peek, the president of Next Health, and I am Dr. Darshan Shah, CEO of Next Health. And the purpose of this podcast is to keep you on the forefront of everything health and wellness, health optimization, and longevity. And I know longevity is a topic near and dear to your heart and mine too, and love to talk to you about that. But before we do that, I'd love a quick bit of your story because it's just, I followed you pretty much, I think, your entire career and just watched what you've done. And you started off in medicine, right?
I did. Yeah. So I was born in New York. Both my parents had immigrated from the island of Lesbos in Greece. My dad was a physician, OBGYN. My mom could have been a doctor. God knows she was amazing in her knowledge. And raised my sister, who's 2 years younger, and I with the expectation would become doctors. I did eventually become a doctor and make my parents happy, but my passion was spaceflight. I wanted, it was Apollo and that scientific documentary called Star Trek, I'm sure you've seen it, that ignited my love of space. And went to MIT as an undergrad, studying molecular biology, and then moonlighting on weekends and nights in the space arena doing research there, and became a serial entrepreneur, went to medical school, and my fourth year of medical school, I had two companies going. I had a launch company building small rockets, and I had started my first university, International Space University, and you can appreciate this, right? So, I mean, I was trying to get through medical school. Luckily, Harvard was pass-fail to a large degree. And my funniest story was, I would take the surgical rotation as much as I could, the night shift from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. I'd go home, sleep till noon, and then I'd go to my office from noon until 10 p.m. and then start the cycle again. It was one moment in time. I mean, I'm just literally trying to graduate, and Dean Tostison, our dean in the medical school, calls me into his office, and he says, "Peter, the interns and residents have told me you're on the phone all the time, you're not paying attention, you're a smart kid. What is going on?" At this point, I'm thinking, oh my God, he's thinking I'm selling drugs or something. And he goes, "Do you want to graduate?" And I break down. I mean, I'm literally in tears, and I fess up everything. And I said, "Listen, I've been, my passion is space. I've been running these companies, and I do want to graduate, but I want to go do this other stuff." And he says, "Okay, listen, I'll make you a deal." He says, "If you promise not to practice medicine, and you pass part 2 of the boards, I'll let you graduate."
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So, 22 companies later, I have not practiced medicine.
Wow. That's amazing.
But you're practicing a brand new kind of medicine here, which in my mind is where medicine needs to go.
Yeah, and you and I went to med school around the same times, and you know that we were taught basically how to diagnose a disease and then what pill could alleviate the symptoms of those diseases. Backwards, right?
Yeah. It's totally, instead of it's sick care versus health care.
Right. It's all disease focused, and honestly, the healthcare goes, the dollars go where the money is there to be made, right? And that's in pharmaceuticals, that's in hospitals, and I just got frustrated with the whole system, just like you are, and we decided to launch Next Health to try to turn the entire system on its head, and that's what we're doing here.
And you are, and I've had the pleasure to start a number of companies. Human Longevity and Cellularity, working on another company, Fountain, and then investing in a number of longevity-related companies. One company is called Elevian, another one is called In Silico Medicine. But I mean, I think it's the work that you're doing here that makes it so easily accessible. Right? I love the fact that you can walk in off the street into a beautiful place like this, 5 minutes later, actually be getting services where people love you, take care of you, and make you feel super special. And this is what people should demand, desire.
And it's high caliber services too. I mean, one of the arts of what we're trying to do here is take things that are pretty complicated and distill them down into a way that they are easily accessible.
Yeah.
You know, we take the complexity out of it.
And actionable, right?
Big time. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, and what you talk about a lot is this abundance mindset. And part of that is just recognizing the fact that we have learned more in the last 5 years than we have in all of humanity combined, right?
All of human history and medicine, we've learned, absolutely. I mean, we understand the 3.2 billion letters, your ATCs and Gs that code for who you are, code for so much. And ultimately, the ability now to understand not only how to sequence it rapidly, right? The cost of sequencing the human genome in 2001, when Craig Venter did it, was $100 million, took 9 months' time. Today, it's sub $1,000 in 4 or 5 hours. Illumina announced it will be down to $100 and an hour in the next couple of years. And so we'll sequence everything, every child born, every time you're admitted to the hospital. And it will not just be some drug that is generically available for everybody. It will be the drug that is specifically for your genotype, right? And then ultimately, we'll never have issues on any kind of anesthesiology, anesthesiological aspects in surgery. And it's like what food you should eat, what you should do for you. We call N of 1 treatments,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, part of that, and this is a struggle I have in my mind all the time, and I'm sure you thought about this a lot too. We have so much data now. If we can have the entire human genome in an hour and do that across millions of people, all that data that we have is sitting there in a server somewhere, but the research hasn't caught up to that data. How do we reconcile that?
It is impossible to, and this is where artificial intelligence comes in, right? No human physician can possibly analyze all of that data. It is going to be an AI that looks at the data and then bluntly transforms that into actionable, meaningful elements.
But then how does the medical community that is so focused on double-blind, placebo-controlled, 10,000 people studies at a perspective, like how do we get them to accept the fact that AI can actually do this a lot better and a lot faster, and you don't necessarily need to have those giant studies? How do we bridge that gap?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the medical system we have today is fundamentally broken.
I agree.
And we're going to be creating a version of medicine which is demonetized and democratized, and people are going to have to let go of the old notions of how we do things. And I think it's just the results are going to show themselves, and people are going to choose to use AI-enabled medicine because it is preventative and predictive, and it is able to tap into amazing ecosystems like you're providing.
And I would say, I think from my perspective is that we vote with our dollars, right? And when you say that it's, the business is going to go where the money is, up until this point, businesses really haven't been incentivized to create something like we've created in NextHealth because everything is insurance driven, right? So, we're seeing firsthand here at NextHealth, I mean, we're a membership-based business, and we have people in their 20s and their 30s that are paying memberships to be a part of a medical facility. While NextHealth doesn't look or feel anything like a doctor's office or a hospital, at the end of the day, we are a medical facility, and people are paying to be members of this, and they're coming on a regular basis. So I think once people start seeing that shift, that's at least our hopes. I mean, that's the whole reason that we're creating NextHealth, is so that we can accomplish exactly that. And hopefully when enough people go and we reach that tipping point, it starts to spread, and those changes are made.
Yeah, I think that is very much, it is, I mean, the most powerful form of marketing right now is not television, it's not internet, it's what's called influencer marketing, right? It's like, I come here and I have an amazing experience. It's unlike anything I've ever done before, and I'm interested in authentically from my heart sharing this with everybody. I don't make a dime off of anything you do, but I want to share it with my community, my friends, my family, because I love what you stand for. I love what you have here. And it's true. And so that is the most meaningful, because we need to have especially for your health, a trust-based system.
Right, absolutely. So one of the things I always talk about here is keeping yourself healthy so that when we unlock the keys to be able to live to 150, 180, that you get there with your brain still intact, your your movement still intact. What is your goal as far as aging goes? I know you've talked about this.
So it's a little bit extreme, but I'm alive during the right time to have a shot at it. So when I was in medical school, I remember I was doing an engineering degree at MIT and a medical diploma at a joint MIT-Harvard medical program. And I remember one day I was home watching a TV show on all old-aged sea life. And they are talking about the fact that whales could live hundreds of years. The Greenland shark can live over 400 years, and like sea turtles could do like a target 700 years. So I'm going, well, if they can, why can't I? And I said, it's either a hardware problem or a software problem. Right? I mean, it is.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be able to fix that. So I set a target of 700 years for a lifespan, which is kind of crazy because if you can live 150 years, you can live forever. I mean, there's a concept that Ray Kurzweil and Aubrey de Grey called longevity escape velocity. That is a very powerful idea. That there's a moment in time that for every year you live a year, science is extending your life expectancy for more than a year.
Right.
And so when I asked Ray Kurzweil, who's my friend, co-founder, and the chancellor of Singularity University, is also considered one of the smartest guys on predictive science, when that's going to happen, he says within the next 12 years. And so what I say is don't die from something stupid in the interim. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had the honor of meeting Ray because through you, which it was incredible at Singularity University, and also Aubrey, and they just changed my entire thinking about wellness and health optimization and longevity. And what Aubrey talks about is, look, aging is really just a combination of different cellular factors that we need to just figure out, and we figured out some of them, and once we get the science to where we figure out those different kind of components of aging within the cell, we'll be able to basically live forever. And what are your feelings about where we are now and this concept of the singularity where, Ray says, basically 2030 was his number, right? Or 2035?
Yeah, so
where are we on that curve?
Yeah, so first of all, the concept of the singularity, it's important to mention. Ray takes that name from physics. In a black hole is referred to as a singularity, right. And there's an event horizon beyond which you cannot see. So the singularity is a moment in time where the rate of technological change is so fast that you can't predict what's next, right? And so I don't know if you feel this as much as I do, and that the world is getting faster, that things are accelerating, that the things that you can do today, is unfathomable a decade ago, and the things that are going to be able to do 10 years from now are going to seem like impossible, right? The world is going to be automagical, as I call it. And so his predictions are that by 2029, right, not long from now, roughly a decade, we're going to see human-level AI, meaning that artificial intelligence is able to think, act, converse at the level of a human being. And then it accelerates very rapidly. His projection of when we're going to see the singularity is on the order of a decade later, late 2030s, 2040s, some say 2045. Anyway, within our lifetimes. Yeah. This is the most important thing to think about, that we're alive during the most extraordinary time ever in human history. I have a organization called Abundance 360 that you're a member of, and we meet every January in Beverly Hills, and I've committed to coaching you and these other CEOs for this 25-year journey ahead leading up to the Singularity. And every year we're looking at, okay, what is the technology going from deceptive to disruptive this year, right? So this year we're doing a very deep dive in longevity. We're doing a deep dive into augmented virtual reality, which is, come out of this hype cycle and is now really going to start changing so much of the world around us. And then, of course, I have Abundance Digital, which is, a 10 times cheaper digital annual program that people participate in. Anyway, long story short, we're in a period of rapid change, and health is going to be one of the most important things we change, right? We're eventually all going to have a AI version that looks like this, but it's our AI software shell that takes in all of your data 24 hours, 7 days a week, and is monitoring you. Right. And is saying, okay, we're noticing some microRNAs in your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. We're going to take you over to, it's going to redirect your autonomous car to take you over to Next Health instead of going to your office. Yeah.
That's great. Amazing. Yeah.
Have we, through this whole process, and I love the idea of living for hundreds of years or forever, I'm with you guys on that, but have you guys thought of, what are we going to do with all the people? I mean, obviously, space exploration comes into the equation.
Great question, and let me share with you the reality. So, I was at an event recently, and people were chastising Elon Musk, who's a friend, for having 5 kids because of overpopulation. And he says, dude, I'm worried about underpopulation of planet Earth. And so if you look at the numbers, and Bill Gates gives a couple of great TED Talks on this, you do 2 things to a population. You make them healthier and better educated, and they go into negative decline. So the U.S. today is below the replacement rate. Teen pregnancies have dropped 60% over the course of the last 25 years. Globally, we're seeing massive decline in population growth rates. So we are likely to peak, we're at 8 billion, or just around 8 billion now. We're likely to peak at about 9.5 billion, maybe 10 billion, and then start a very rapid decline.
That's scary. It is.
And so I think, honestly, longevity is not going to be a problem. We're not going to have, and I'm a pilot, and as I fly over most of the country, or as you guys are on an airplane, look out the window, most of the country is unpopulated. Most of the world is unpopulated. Yes, we have these megacities where everybody aggregates, and we'll have 100+ megacities growing, but they aggregate there into those megacities. Why? Because those are where their jobs are, that's where entertainment is. But as we start to have, full up immersive VR, you can get your entertainment and do your job from any place. And having to be in a downtown city will change. Autonomous cars, flying cars will cause cities to spread. And so a lot's going to change in the next 20 years.
No, absolutely. And if you look at the population right now, all over the world, it's an aging population, and that also speaks to your what you just said about we're not having enough kids, we're not having enough babies. People are it used to be 3 kids per family, and now it's 1 point something, and so it's there is a decline, and you can at some point I think a lot of people worry about the resources that we have, energy resources, food, but those problems are going to be solved. Right.
They are, and we're moving very rapidly. If we romanticize the good old days of 100 years ago, but the reality is life really sucked 100 years ago. Yeah. Right? I mean, 100 years ago, let's call it 1918. In that year, the flu infected 500 million people. 50 million people died in 1 year from the flu. Wow. Right? I think it was 15 or 20 million people died from World War I in that 1 year. I mean, imagine having those headlines today. It'd be, it would be literally the end of the world. Right. But we are living an amazing life today, and it's getting better and better. The cost of food has dropped 20x. The cost of transportation's dropped 50-fold. Soon, autonomous electric Ubers, car as a service, will be 5 times cheaper than owning a car, right? And electricity from the sun is plummeting in cost. This past year in 2017, it was half the cost of coal. We're heading towards under a penny per kilowatt hour. And then if you have abundant clean energy, you've got abundant clean water, education, healthcare, all these things are rapidly demonetizing. Yes, healthcare is ridiculously expensive today, right? And inefficient. But that's going to change, and you guys are part of that change.
Right.
One of the things that frustrates me is I feel like you're so right, but today people are so focused on the negative.
Yeah.
And you're so right. There's so many positives. We are living in a world that is so much better, and we're having such advancements, but it's really hard to get people to focus on those items rather than focus on all the BS that's going on a regular basis.
This is my stick as well. I'm on stage on a soapbox, I would say, trying to make people aware of this. My first book was called Abundance: The Future is Better Than You Think, right? It was I was one of the closing speakers at Clinton Global Initiative with President Clinton, and it was one of his favorite books of the year. And he's invited me on stage, and he goes, "Peter, why are you so positive about the future? Don't you watch the news?" And
It bleeds, it leads,
I remember it. It bleeds, it leads. I said, President Clinton, actually, no, I do not watch the news. And I'm positive about the future for 2 reasons. One, I don't watch the news. The second is I look at the data, and the data is extraordinary. And by almost every single measure, the world has gotten, orders of magnitude better. The challenge is that as we were evolving on the savannas of Africa 100,000 years ago, call it our caveman era, a piece of bad news could kill you, right? Like a rustle in the leaves is not the wind, it's a lion. Or squiggle on the ground is not a stick, it's a snake. And so we evolved an ancient piece of our temporal lobe called the amygdala that is the stop for everything you see and everything you hear first. And it fundamentally puts you on red alert. And like you said, if it bleeds, it leads. We pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. And as a result of that, bluntly, all the negative news headlines get people's attention. And so if you open up the newspaper or watch what I call the Crisis News Network, CNN, it's 10 to 1 negative to positive stories. Because that's what we pay attention to. Our brains are glued to the negative stories. And why do the newspapers and TV stations do that? Because their job is to deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers. So if you pay 10 times attention to negative news to the positive news,
absolutely,
it's insane.
I've never heard that before. That's such a great point. We're evolutionarily wired to take bad news 10 times more seriously than good. And it's so true. I never thought of it that way.
Bad news kills you. Good news is feels good.
I'm alive another day.
Yeah, but you're not.
Exactly. Interesting. So, okay, let's go back to longevity.
Let's do it.
You're hooked up to an IV right now, getting NAD. And NAD is one of my favorite longevity hacks. But what I always tell people is, before you start doing longevity hacks,
and where do I go for my NID transfusions? Next health.
Thank you. But you got to do a lot of things to set the base correct first. And I think, getting your sleep right, getting your diet right, getting your...
Dude, I tell people, they said, what do you want to do for longevity? I said, right now, eat, sleep, and exercise. Right? Fundamental stuff. If you don't do that, you're screwed. In fact, I'm wearing my Aura ring here.
You got the new one.
Yeah, I got the brand new one. Just my venture fund is a lead investor in Aura. And so in this little ring here is packed 2 infrared LEDs and receivers, a 3-axis accelerometer, a 6-axis gyro, 2 thermistors. And it basically is able to monitor my sleep. It's $300, and allows me to understand the quality of my sleep, the amount of deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep, and so forth, so that you can begin to modify your behavior. I've shifted myself mostly to a vegan diet, not 100%, but I get probably a fraction of my protein from animal fats. Exercise is my biggest challenge because I'm traveling so damn much, but I'm going to be recommitting to that. Except I go through a phase where I recommit. I'm off to Brazil in 24 hours to go for. We have an Abundance 360 in Brazil, and I'm back for a couple weeks. I'm off to China for the same thing. Anyway, long story short, those are fundamentals. And then on top of that, what I love about Next Health is you help me establish my baseline numbers. Right? I come in at a Next Health baseline, and I say this all the time: if you can't measure it, you can't change it. And so understanding what your baseline numbers are at a minimum, so you understand how things are changing in your world, is fundamentally critical. And then you start to layer things on top of that. Now, so for me, again, sleep, exercise, diet, then getting a baseline, and then a number of things that you can do, and you offer a multitude of them here. And then, sort of, if you would, as Ray would call it, stage 1 to longevity is what we have here at Next Health. And then stage 2 is coming. It's in the labs. It's in the FDA approvals. It's things like allogenic stem cell transfusions. It's things like Unity Biosciences, which have these senolytic medicines that take the senile cells out of your body that have stopped growing and are causing inflammation. It's things like Samumed that's got this Wnt pathway manipulation that is magical. I mean, there's a lot of amazing things coming down the line, right? So I truly believe that we're going to be adding at least 10, 20, 30 years on our healthy lifespan. I should also mention, very complementary to Next Health is what Human Longevity does. Down in San Diego, where these full body MRIs and the coronary CTs and brain imaging your brain vasculature to understand, is there anything going on inside your body right now that you need to know? I mean, here's the challenge, right? Most of us are walking around thinking that we're fine. How do you feel? Great. And then, if you go to somebody who's doubling over in the emergency room of the hospital and ask, how did you feel like a week ago? The chances are they felt great. Yep. And it's only when your body is able to deal with growing issues until it reaches a red line, and then it takes you down. So, when I have a Model S and a Model X Tesla, and I've got a couple airplanes, and when I'm in those vehicles, I'm checking the gauges, and everything is in the green, right? There are hundreds of microprocessors, hundreds of sensors telling me everything is fine, and if anything was off, I'd fix it.
Right, you're not just flying your plane like, oh, it feels pretty good today. We don't need to look at those things.
Yeah, and so, but for most of us, our refrigerators are better wired than we are, right?
Right. And
that's going to change. I mean, this Aura Ring, and I have an Alive Core watch that takes my EKG. If I ever feel anything, I can. It tells me if I have any atrial fibrillation, something like that. My father had atrial fib, which caused a multitude of issues for him in his life, right? So I think about that, and I wear this watch. If I ever fear anything, he can diagnose it, and an AI monitors this, and up in the cloud, and it'll get me. But anyway, the point being, at Human Longevity, at our health nucleus, we have caught like 2% of the people coming through the health nucleus have brain aneurysms they don't know about. 2%, which is insane, right? 2.5% of cancers growing in their body don't know about. And these are people who are the best, typically the best. They've all been in the Mayo Clinic and so forth. So there's a multitude of things you have to do, or can do, or should choose to do, right? So for me, Next Health is like baseline, right? Eating, sleeping, exercising, coming here, getting my appropriate IV, checking my baseline activities, going once a year to the health nucleus, and then monitoring all these breakthroughs in the lab of when they're going to become available.
Right. I think you're so right about that. I think it's all about the data and educating yourself on what the data means. So people have to take that step in their mind where they're not going to outsource their health to their primary care doctor, because Honestly, they have 15 minutes to see you once a year.
It's insane.
It's insane.
I
Right?
mean, I pay a ton of money for a personal physician who I care a lot about, and for that reason, I get a lot more attention. But I remember what it used to be like, and it was like just, it's very baseline, basic things. And then when you're trying to get an appointment, it could be weeks. I mean, that's crazy. I love the fact that you just walk in, literally walk in here and you can accommodate people. The term I use, Darshan, is making yourself the CEO of your own health.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Which is what we now have the ability to do. And that makes it super exciting. And being able to track your data, and I know that you guys are developing the digital apps that will allow me to have a repository of all my data. Because I've had, a dozen doctors over the years. And God knows where all my data is, but it's the longitudinal collection of data that helps me understand what's going on.
Yeah, and that's what Next Health is all about, is making you the CEO of your own health. Because let's be honest, most people don't know where to go to do this, right? Like your primary care doctor's going to say, get out of here, you're fine. I'll run a little bit of blood work on you. But we want to educate people. We want to give them all the tools in one place so that they can track their baseline lab value, so they can do some things to help them maintain their health and improve their longevity, and just kind of be a resource for people. It's more about education, which is why we're here doing this podcast, why I sincerely appreciate you doing this with us, because you're like you're the guru of this type of thinking about the CEO of your own health and this abundance mindset that everyone should focus on.
So thank you, Paul. My mission for myself, my abundance community, the work I do at the X Prize, is I am really focused on tracking all of the most solid, viable science, where it is and what its potential impact is, and then being able to make it understandable to people. So when I find something like Next Health, and I'm thankful to our buddy Sony, I want to say, okay, here it is, easy on-ramp, super easy, and valuable.
One thing I want to mention too is thank you for inviting me to be on the innovation board of X Prize.
Yes, yeah.
What an incredible organization.
Yeah. So let me just say to your viewers, Darshan is incredibly generous and amazing. I chair and serve as the CEO of the X Prize Foundation, and we are focusing on really taking on and solving the world's biggest problems in energy, food, water, health, and so forth. And we have a group of 50 of our innovation board members who are individuals who underwrite our operations through philanthropic contributions. And Darshan joined us here, and I'm so proud of the work that we do and thankful for your support.
You're really moving the needle with X Prize. I can feel it.
One thing that I was going to say that I feel a big part of the mindset that we need to change is making people realize health is not the absence of disease, right? And that's the mindset with doctors. It's the optimal range. No, you're not sick. You don't have cancer right now. And that's what we're trying to do with Next Health also, is not tell, you don't want to be in the average range. You want to optimize. You want to be in the upper range. You want to feel as good as humanly possible. The only way you're going to live to 700 years old, if that's what the goal is not by being average, it's by being extraordinary. Yeah. So we want to give people the ability and the tools to do that, and that's how we test. We don't test for average, we test for great.
Yeah, I agreed. And one of the things I think people don't realize is your mental attitude is fundamentally critically important. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like you can will yourself to die.
Right.
You can give up on life. Right, and there are those people who just say, I'm tired, I'm done, or have lost a loved one and don't want to go on living, right? And there are those people who are able to maintain their youthful gratitude and love of life and excitement and just are joy to be around. And I think if you it's interesting. I do an exercise at Abundance 360. That we'll do this coming year, in which I say, okay, here's the actuarial tables. depending on what year you were born, this is when you are supposed to die. Write that number down. Okay, then what is the number that you hold in your head? Everybody's got a number in their head of how long they think they're going to live, and it's based upon when their father or mother died or friends died, whatever the case might be. A lot of people may say 80 is great, 85 is great, maybe you push till 90. And then I will, we'll have on stage, I'll bring in this Bob Hurry, one of the most brilliant scientists in my life, from Singularity, talking about the impact of stem cells. I'll bring in Osman Kibar from SamuMed. I'll bring in Keith Leonard from Unity. I'll bring in Mark Allen from Elevian, a few of these companies, and we'll talk about what they're doing. And then I'll say, okay, now how long do you think you're going to live, right? And people may add 10, 20, 30 years in their lifespan. I'll say, hey, we just gave you 30 years of life. And that attitude is so fundamentally important. It's punching through that.
Yeah, that's so true. So can we do a quick speed round on some of the things you mentioned?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe a couple minutes on senescent cells.
Yeah. So your cells in your body have a clock on them. And you will typically limit out your cells at like 50 replications. And you're constantly losing cells through your body. In fact, your entire body turns over like every 2 to 3 years, right? Your gut epithelium turns over much faster in days. Your red blood cells turn over 120 days. But at the end of a number of divisions, your
Hardwick's
cells.
limit or
What's that?
Hardwick's limit or Hardwick's?
The Hardwick limitation.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's oh man, I just blank on it. But Hartflick.
Hartflick, that's what it is.
And Hayflick limitation. That's it. Hayflick.
We got it.
We got there. And you googling here. And when your cell stops dividing, it basically becomes what's known as senescent, and it sits there and it becomes an inflammatory pain in the ass to your body. And so what was discovered by Unity Biosciences and a few other companies is that you can actually develop medicines that find cells that are senescent and targets only those cells and kills them. And then it opens up room for cell rejuvenation from the latent stem cells that are in your tissues. And so if you give a mouse these senolytic medicines, you will increase their lifespan by 30% and make them disease-free. It's amazing. So that's the first one.
Aren't there ways to do that naturally, though, as well, through putting your body through controlled stress? Would that be kind of the same thing like cryotherapy or extreme workouts, or where you're kind of pushing your body so that the weaker cells die off?
There may be. I can't speak to it because I don't know.
Got it. Okay.
Next.
Telomeres.
So telomeres are a measure of cell replication, and there is, measuring your telomere length gives you a relatively accurate assessment of your biological age, not necessarily your chronological age, but your biological age. And the question is, there are drugs you can take to extend your telomeres. The question is, are those carcinogenic? Because you don't want to cause unlimited growth, because that's what the cancer does. But there are ways to lengthen your telomeres naturally without drugs. Vegan diets, meditation, some of the work that you do here with red light and cryo and so forth. But telomeres typically is a measurement, not a cause of health of your cells.
And that's what we offer. We offer telomere length measurements here, and we like to measure them at least once a year for people to show them how the interventions we're doing are turning back their cellular age. And there's a lot, like you said, the drugs out there, I don't really trust them yet because of potential for, not causing cancer cells to die off, but it's great as a measurement. Okay, so you've been accused, I heard this on a podcast today, of doing young blood. Talk about that one.
All right, so accused, but not actually true.
Okay, good. So it's a podcast rumor going around right now.
All right, so what the hell is young blood anyway? Many decades ago, a scientist did some research where she took an old mouse and anastomosed its circulatory system to a young mouse, meaning attached the venous system of the two mice together, and so that the blood from the old mouse went into the young mouse, and the blood from the young mouse went to the old mouse, and amazingly, the old mouse got younger and the young mouse got older. So what's that about? Sounds like Dracula, right? And it turns out that you can measure, and a few labs, one at Harvard, one at Stanford, have done the research to understand what are the proteins present in young blood that are not present in old blood, and vice versa. What are the proteins present in old blood, not present in young blood? And one of the companies that my venture fund backed, that I'm an advisor to, called Elevian, has identified a molecule called GDF11 that is a couple orders of magnitude higher in youth and falls off rapidly with age. And if you take that GDF11 molecule and you give it to old mice, it rejuvenates them. So that looks like to be the causative factor. And so they're working on making that into a drug. Right now it's to be injected every day. Can you make it something that you can inject once a week or once a month? And then they've identified another molecule that is present in older individuals, not in youth. Can you create an antibody to pull that out of circulation?
Wow.
So that's the work going on there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. I can't wait to see what happens along those lines. CRISPR.
So CRISPR is a technology that we should get into more detail on another podcast. I'd love to come back.
Yeah.
But we now can sequence all 3.2 billion letters of your life, and then we can begin to edit your genome. So it turns out that 32,000 out of 50,000 human ailments are caused by a single nucleotide change. A single A switch to a T or a G to a C causes a disease. And so can we use a version of CRISPR called CRISPR 2.0 to go in your genome and make that fix?
Amazing.
So I would say, dude, we're alive during the most extraordinary time ever. It's amazing. I'm thankful to have Next Health, 20 minutes from my home, and excited to be coming back here on a regular basis.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor and pleasure to have you here. You've been so gracious. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Go NAD. All right, go Next Health. Thank you, everybody.